Friday night. New York Rangers, Toronto Maple Leafs in Toronto. The buildup was incredible. Revo, friend of the show, before the game, he was asked, "Would you fight Matt Rempe if he asked?" He's like, "I'm not saying no. I'm not running around. I'm saying yes for sure. I'm not going to duck this guy." And sure enough, they came together early on in the game. Ryan Reaves asked Matt Rempe to fight, and he said no. What did you think of that, Tim?
Well, the first shift that Rempe had in the game, he was kind of chasing the puck in the offensive zone, and he lost an edge in the Leaf zone by himself, and the crowd went wild. It was hilarious. And then fast forward a little bit later in the first period, the Rangers are up 1-0, and Reaves challenges him, and he says no. And when it was off screen on the live broadcast because it was behind the play, and when they talked about, something's happening, and I would have figured it was Rempe asking Reaves, and Reaves saying no, not really paying attention to the score, more just like the young kid wants to make a name for himself. But it was Reaves asking, Rempe said no, and that makes sense. You don't want to give the Leafs any momentum or any chance to claw back into it. But Reaves and the Leafs gave it to him for the rest of the game until they ended up fighting later for saying no, right?
Yeah, you would think so. And you can tell that he had a conversation with his coach, Laviolette. Rempe did, because I think he would have said yes if he hadn't had that conversation. But you mentioned before you wrote down, sorry, not mentioned, we were talking before he even accepted the second Reaves challenge, he had to look to the bench and get the okay. And I've had this before where players, it's so bizarre. I remember I fought Derek England one time, and I was in Buffalo, he was in Pittsburgh, and I honestly had to look past England to Bylsma. And I was like, let's go. Let him fight me. And I'm looking at Bylsma on the bench, trying to get him to let Derek England to fight me. And then finally he fought me and I beat him up. But it was they definitely had a conversation, and rightfully so. I think they should have had that. This kid was putting his face through the ringer. And when you look at who he's fought, it's a pretty good, fight card of Delorier, Olivier, and now Reaves. And he's been in the league for less than 2 weeks. That's some heavy hitters. So he got the okay, and they eventually fought. But this was after, yes, he throws a huge hit on Lyubushkin. They're losing 3-2. It was the right time for them to fight, and he did his job. And lo and behold, the Rangers come back and tie it up, and they lose in a shootout. But I think it did spur on the New York Rangers to tie the game up and gave him a little bit of an energy. So that's exactly what he wanted out of that fight. But I like that he said no. We mentioned last show how George Laraque would always fight on his terms, and you can tell it takes the pressure off a player, Tim, when you have to get the okay to fight. I very rarely had that where I had to ask the coach if I can fight, but it gives you an excuse not to fight, which players kind of want sometimes. And then they can just focus on the game. So going in, he knew he wasn't going to fight unless the coach said so. So you could focus on playing the game. You could focus on something else. If you're just constantly worrying about that fight, you don't think about the game at all, and it makes it very hard to play. So I'm glad Laviolette did that, because it frees him up to just focus on the game. But let's talk about the actual fight, Tim. Tell me how it started. You analyzed it, slowed it down. Talk about it.
Well, but actually, before we do that, I want to talk about the hit in the first period.
Oh, yes.
Because Rempe threw a big hit on Lyubushkin, and who left the game.
Welcome back, Ilya.
Right, who left the game with a head injury, didn't come back. Keefe was not happy about it after the game. He commented about the Reaves fight having something to do with it. People are saying Rempe left his feet, that it was kind of a dirty hit. What are your thoughts on it? Because there was no call or anything like that.
It's a clean hit. It's a perfectly fine hit. People are dumb. I don't know. It's a perfectly, you can leave your feet a little bit after contact. That's fine. That's natural. Right. You're exploding into the hit. At the point of contact, he was still on the ice. So great hit. Crushed a guy. Absolutely demolished him. Lyubushkin he goes from being 2 feet wide to being 6 inches wide. He just gets pasted onto the boards. Clean hit. Absolutely monstrous hit.
And not to blame the victim, but you put yourself in a bad spot when you're making the play. Aren't you supposed to go up against the board? He's 2 or 3 feet from the boards, which is just the worst place, because you're just going to get tossed into it, and it's going to go. You're going to go angled in. It's not like you're going to stay upright when you take a hit like that. You're supposed to get up against the boards if you see a guy coming like that after you make the play, which he could have done, but he didn't do. So,
And now
whatever.
he's out. Good for him. But yeah, he buried him.
Yeah.
And then the response, I don't think this was the response to the hit. And then back to Sheldon Keefe. Like, just shut up, man. Like, you come off so whiny when you do this.
He does.
Like, it's just, I'm surprised he's still a coach in the league. It's fascinating to me that he has been fired. But anyways.
Well, he's going to coach for the rest of his, as long as he wants to now, even if it's not with Toronto, just because of all the games that he's won.
You're probably right. It's just he's got the Galchenyuk effect.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the fight. So Rempe finally he looks at the bench, gets the okay, and they start tossing. And one of the things that everyone said right away, even during the fight, is that it was the adjustments he had made since his last two fights with Delorier and Olivier were noticeable. He definitely had a different approach for fighting Reaves. What did you see?
100%. And I don't want to take any credit for this, even though we have talked and on Messenger. So there has been some communication, but he did look more composed a little bit. He wasn't rushed. He was more patient with his punches, and he did have a better grab, albeit he had a better attempted grab. Where he grabbed his shirt and his jersey was good. The spot was good. The actual grab itself is terrible. Because you look at the fight, Reaves backing way off, the jersey's stretched out, there's no control there. And it's hard to fight someone who has that much movement. And you can see Ryan knows what he's doing. I don't know if he has the collar of his jersey purposely extended or loose, or he has some elastics on it, because it was stretching out so far, Tim, and Matt Rempe could not get a decent grab on him or control him, and Ryan uses this to his advantage the whole time. You can't reach him. He's pulling way far back, and you're just stuck in it, and Rempe just has to do some jersey jabs every now and again, but it's unfortunate because he does reach, he just doesn't grab him in the right spot, and I was talking to Tim before the show. I don't know if I always grab the guy's undershirt or if I grabbed his shoulder pads or whatever it is. But when I would grab somebody, I would grab him by the collar, or if I twisted his jersey up, I can't think of what I used to do. It's been so long. I would have control of him at some, not total control, but I could move him around a little bit. I could pull him in. I could uppercut if I wanted to. That's the advantage of being tall. You grab that guy and then you can move him around a little bit. It's easier on skates, obviously, but Remke had no control whatsoever. And you could tell that during the fight. He's trying to stand up straight. He's trying to keep his arm locked. He's trying to, keep him at arm's length. But Revo he really did have a huge advantage because of all the room he had in his neck. He could move left, right, up, down. He could come in closer. So next time I want Matt to just maybe even re-grab during that fight. Take some time. Grab your left and right, hold on to Ryan, work your grip a little bit better just so you can have more control, because having those long arms is such an advantage. I use that all the time when I fought. I very rarely got hit because I would grab him, I would lock him out. If I didn't have a good grab, I would re-grip. And then the fight gets going, and it's a good fight. I would say Revo won the fight overall, but Matt Remke, he skates away fine. He's not leaving battered and bloodied, and he's not, after the Olivier fight, you think this guy's going to have to go to the hospital. So it was a good fight all around. I think the crowd got exactly what they wanted. That was a heavyweight fight. Both guys were throwing punches. Both guys were aggressive. Revo at one point just waves off the referees. I love that. Everybody got their shots in. Everybody skated away. Everybody was healthy, and then they went on their way. It was a great result for everybody involved. Remke gets to say, I fought one of the toughest guys in the league. I survived it. And Revo says, I didn't duck somebody, because that's what I thought he was going to do. I thought he was just going to go about his business. The Leafs are going to win the game. Everybody's happy. It was a fantastic result. I think Matt will get better. I think he has to better grab, and then maybe his feet. There's a lot to work on with him. He's a moldable piece of clay right now. I think he stands up too upright to a point where it's like you're not getting as much power out of your punches. But not that I was a huge power puncher, but I'm going to work with him. We're going to coach him up. But yeah, great fight. Great fight by both guys.
It was a great fight, plus the lead up to it. And then you can see Reaves, he's going right to center ice, because they started near the bench and he's like, hey, follow me, right? And then they get into it. And I was watching, and I was rooting for Rempe, just being the young kid and just being like, okay, let's see what he can do. And at first, it felt like he was winning, or at least he was holding his own really well, and wasn't really landing a lot of the heavies, but he was jabbing a lot with his jersey hand. And then, but it was, doesn't bother a guy like Reaves. But then by the end of the fight, Reaves had just gotten a few good haymakers in. But credit for Rempe for staying upright. That was the big thing that I was kind of watching for, was just like he didn't go down. He took the punches, and you could tell he had, because Reaves wanted to keep going. And he said to the ref like twice, he was like, all right, I'm done. Are we done here? But I thought it was good.